Hello friends, welcome back to my channel EduCare. I'm Gemini and today we'll be studying about a very important topic of 11th biology, which is cell cycle and cell division. So when do cells actually divide? You might be thinking that whenever you get hurt or else during the process of reproduction, right? No, the cell growth is happening right now also. So, we do not know about the events that undertake between the highlighted portions, right? So, today we will be studying about those events that basically take place in a cell when it is about to divide or when it is dividing. So, it is known as a cell cycle. So what basically is cell cycle? The ordered steps that take place when the cell is about to divide. Okay, and whenever it is even not dividing, still some of the events are occurring in your cells. There needs to be growth and maintenance that is, continuously be done in your body. Okay, so whenever either you get a cut and the new cells, come over there, new cells are replaced by those cuts. So those kinds of cells where new cells develop is said to be somatic cells. But during the process of reproduction, as you might have studied in your lower classes, it is known as meiosis, okay? And when the number of chromosomes remain the same when the cells divide, it is known as mitosis. That is the basic ideology that you have carried forward from your lower classes. But what happens before that? What happens after that? That particular events or those series of steps is what is cell cycle. So what is the definition of cell cycle? A series of events that take place in a cell. When it is growing or whenever it is about to divide, those series of steps are known as a cell cycle. So basically, they can be divided into two phases, right? The first is interphase, when the cell is not actually dividing but preparing itself for the division. That phase is known as interphase. You might be surprised to know this happens, this event takes place about 95% of the time. Imagine, the cell division might only take place for an hour or else whenever the mammalian cells divide, like us in humans, it takes about 24 hours. It might be different for different organisms. For example, in yeast cell, it just takes about 60 minutes to divide. So, there are two basic events, or you can say the cell cycle might be divided into two basic phases, which is interphase and M phase. The events which occur before and after the actual division is known as interphase, and the phase where the actual division occurs, that is known as M phase. Okay, so the interphase is further divided into three further phases: G1 phase, S phase and G2 phase. Fine. So you can compare it to giving exams. So whenever you want to give exams, that exam is just for an hour, or else you can say for 3 hours, but you prepare it prepare it throughout the entire year, right? So similarly, you can compare it to likewise. What do you do when exams are coming, right? First of all, what you do is collect your material. That becomes your growth 1 phase. After that, you start studying. That becomes your S phase. And finally, you revise your topics, whatever you've done. Either it is, up to the mark or not. That becomes the G2 phase, which is followed by the examination and which would become the M phase. Fine. And while you are in the resting phase, it would become the quiescent stage. Okay, so these events need to occur in a particular manner and in an order, right? Otherwise, what would happen? The result which is needed to be obtained won't be obtained, right? So let us further study. You can compare it. These events can be compared to this example and you can easily memorize these steps. Okay, so now let us look into the details of the interphase. The first one is the G1 phase. You can also call it as gap 1 and also as growth 1 phase. What happens in G1 phases? The ATP production is done and the proteins are synthesized, because now the cell actually needs to prepare itself for the division. You can consider it as a checkpoint. These events, when carried out properly, would lead to ultimate final result of cell division. So what happens in G1 phase, as discussed earlier, this cell is very much active. Metabolically, it is very much active. What do we mean by metabolic reactions? The production of ATP. The food that you take, the nutrition that you take, finally gets converted into energy. And this energy, is utilized. So that is the reason whenever a person is sick, he is advised to take proper food, proper nutrition. So this might be the reason behind it. Then next comes S phase. As the name suggests, it is the synthesis phase. where the actual DNA replication takes place, right? Now remember one very important thing. The number of chromosomes, that is, in us humans it is 46 chromosomes, right? You might be knowing, or else you can also call it as 23 pairs. So those number of chromosomes remain the same. This needs to be very much noted, that if it is mitosis, the number of chromosomes would remain the same, just its amount will get doubled. So if the number of chromosomes is 2C, it would turn into 4C. The volume of the chromosome increases, but the number does not increase in the case of mitosis. This needs to be noted, everyone. Now, if there are diploid cells, right, like somatic cells, as I discussed earlier, wherever there is a cut or you get any injury and the cells are replaced by new cell, the division that occurs during that time is mitosis. But when the cell is undergoing reproduction or in the gonads, what happens is, which cell division occurs during that time? It is meiosis. Now, so as we have, what can be brought about from this topic is the DNA replication. So the actual synthesis takes place in the S phase, and the number of chromosomes would remain the same, but it's just volume would increase, fine. After the S phase comes G2 phase, okay, where the RNA synthesis takes place. G2 phase can also be called as gap 2 phase or else growth 2 phase, where the cell organelles also need to double since the cell are converting into 2, fine. So the RNA synthesis takes place and the cell again is ready for the actual division, right? You revise your topics. It can be compared to that. After G2 phase, what comes is M phase. M phase is the one where actual division of cell takes place, and it just takes about 1 hour out of the total 24 hours. Imagine the 23 hours or the maximum amount of time the cell is undergoing the interphase, and when the cell actually divides, it is known as M phase. M phase can be characterized by the division of the nucleus and the division of the cell, which are respectively known as karyokinesis and cytokinesis in biology. Karyon means nucleus. So when its division occurs, it is known as karyokinesis. And whenever the cell cytoplasm actually divides into two particular portions or two cells, it is known as cytokinesis. M phase can also be further divided into PMAT. You can remember it with pre-medical admission test. And its full forms are prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, about which we'll be learning later on. Now, what happens after the examination? You are in a full-on chill-on mode, right? You rest for a while and prepare yourself for the next examinations. Do exams end? No. Similarly, do our cells stop dividing? No. Fine. So, cells prepare themselves after the actual division of the cell takes place, right? A cell gets divided into two daughter nuclei. Again, those two cells will further divide into two daughter nuclei. The, deeper cut you get, the more cells are needed in order to replace that cut, right? So more number of division of cells needs to be performed. So those two particular cells will again divide in order to fully recover your body, or in the case of meiosis, also the same phenomena occurs, fine. So after the M phase is the quiescent stage. Quiescent stage, or you can also call it as G0 or G0 stage, while the cell is resting. Many of the cells are under the quiescent stage, or you can also call it as an inactive stage. What are the examples of quiescent stage? Our nerve cells, our heart cells, okay, the cardiac muscles which are present in the heart cells. If when a human being is born, whenever the birth of a baby takes place, it is said that you can compare it with the size of your fist. So imagine if the heart cells would have been continuously increasing, the heart of ours would right now be of the size of a football. Imagine if it is still dividing. But it is not, right? Whenever it is required, only at that time when cell division takes place, it is known as quiescent stage. So let's summarize what we have studied. Cell cycle and cell division basically can be divided into two further subparts: interphase and metaphase. The cell, when it prepares itself for the division, is known as to enter the interphase, and when the cell division actually takes place, that is known as M phase. Interphase can be further divided into G1 phase, which is also known as growth 1 phase, S phase, which is known as synthesis phase, G2 phase, which is known as growth 2 phase, which is followed by the actual division of the cell, and the cell enters into M phase, Phase can also be memorized in the form of an acronym PMAT, Pre-Medical Admission Test. P stands for prophase, M stands for metaphase, A for anaphase, and T for telophase. After the actual division of the cell, it enters into a temporary resting stage, which is also known as quiescent stage or else G0 stage. So I hope with this explanation, you are able to understand the cell cycle and cell division. Thank you.